We like the part where Thoreau goes to Walden Pond. So we're continuing the reading about his adventures at Walden Pond at page 200. And since it's cold and we're simulating a similar thing for Thoreau without any heat. As Thoreau explored the ruins and cellar holes in his neighborhood, as Thoreau explored the ruins and cellar holes in his neighborhood, which is near on Walden Pond, a surprising reality emerged. Not long before, this land was a little village of former slaves, day laborers, immigrants, and poor whites, nearly all squatters and all without money. Yet they'd had houses, gardens, and chickens, families, and lives, and dreams. Why had they lived here rather than in town? ? The road behind his house had once been the great country road connecting Boston to New Hampshire, one of the major arteries of New England. But after 1785, when the shortcut opened by way of Lexington and Charleston, it was just Walden Road, leading out of town to nowhere in particular, through marginal land, too rocky and sterile to farm. The landowners didn't care enough about it to evict the squatters. So Walden Woods became one of the two places where Concord tolerated the impoverished, the displaced, and the abandoned, who were left alone to squabble out a living as best they could. The other place, the edge of the great field, had done better. Freed slaves would live out there for generations. Peter Hutchinson, the butcher, with his family, Jack Gerson, the laborer who'd escaped from New Jersey, with his wife, Susan Robbins, a daughter of Caesar Robbins, and her brother, Peter Robbins, and his family, the Garrison's daughters, worked in town, and their son, John, was the gardener at the old manse. In Thoreau's day, the neighborhood still survived as families helped one another out, squatting on Humphrey Barrett's land. Why, Thoreau wondered, did Walden Village fail while Concord Village thrived? Could not the basket, stable broom, mat-making, corn parching, linen spinning, and pottery business have thrived here, making the wilderness to blossom like the rose? There were no water privileges, pond, leaving the, good port, of Walden Pond, alas, all unimproved. It would be up to him now to found the next generation. My house, raised last spring to be the oldest in the hamlet, . Ironically, he would be right, but not in the way he envisioned. Emerson and his descendants would buy up most of the land around Walden Pond, which they deemed to future generations as a park. Long after Thoreau's house was gone, it would be honored as the foundation of a new generation of environmental thinking. Walden Pond would not be settled after all, but preserved. And not because it was valued, but because it wasn't. What Thoreau was studying at Walden was how to see in the wastelands at the margins of commerce, the center of a new system of value. Very interesting passage. This is about environmental thinking. Did you like that? I didn't know that. To see this meant widening his sense of responsibility to the largest circle of all, beyond house, beyond neighbors, to the world of nature. Or perhaps he realized it was the circle of nature that extended to include himself. Either way, Thoreau felt a powerful intimacy. Quote, "What sweet and tender, the most innocent and divinely encountering society there is in every natural object," unquote. He wrote, quote, "I was so distinctly made aware of the presence of my kindred, even in scenes which we are accustomed to call wild. Each night he fell asleep to the sounds of wind and wild animals, and each dawn he awoke to a world humans did not dominate." He had experienced this while camping. But now he was not merely camping, but dwelling, where the outdoors came inside with the summer air, wafting through the chinks in the walls, carrying the scent of pine and the sounds of birds. Would you like to have a cabin in the woods? No. Okay. His first kindred was the mouse, who built its nest under his house, and having, quote, "never seen the race of man before," did not fear him, but came to pick up the crumbs at his feet, running, quote, "over my shoes and up my pantaloons, inside, clinging to my flesh with its sharp claws." Instead of repelling it, Thoreau invited it closer. Quote, "When I held it a piece of cheese, it came and nibbled between my fingers, and then cleaned its face and paws like a fly." Remember the haiku poem about the fly cleaning its paws? Speaking of Japanese poetry, haiku. Was that Isa? Thoreau's new companion was still wild enough to stay hidden when Joseph Hosmer came to visit, and he had to take on faith Thoreau's report that, quote, "when he played upon the flute, it would come and listen from its hiding place, disappearing again when Thoreau changed the tune." Someone memorialized Thoreau's small friend by drawing a mouse on the back of his door. Yeah, the mice can be nice. I mean, they got a bad reputation. Can't you be nice to mice? Why are you hostile towards mice?
They bite.
They bite. I don't think they bite. Wilder kindred turned his thoughts in a new direction in the dead of his first winter. Thoreau found not 2 paces from his door one, quote, Jean Lapin, trembling with fear, yet unwilling to move, a poor, wee thing, lean and bony, with ragged ears and a sharp nose, scant tail, and slender paws. He stepped towards the poor starving hare, and lo away he scud with elastic spring over the snowy crust into the bushes, a free creature of the forest, still wild and fleet, and soon put the forest between me and itself. He's talking about a rabbit. The wild beings he became aware of were far more intensely aware of him. In time, stories would multiply of Thoreau's mystical bond with the wild creatures of Walden. How with one whistle he could summon a woodchuck, with another a pair of squirrels, with a third various birds, including 2 crows, one of them, as a startled witness recalled, nesting upon his shoulder. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine crows nesting upon his shoulder? Crows are like rough birds. I thought they would. Crows can like peck you. He would feed them from his pockets with his hand, stroke them gently, and dismiss them each with their own strange low whistle, he could reach into the water, and the fish would not flint away, but allow him to grasp them gently and bring them into the air unharmed. That's so strange. I don't know. No wonder he's a legend. We're reading about the legend of Henry David Thoreau at Walden Pond. This is maybe, I don't know. I could see this being true, a lot of these animals. If you don't scare them, if you appear to be nice, they'll be friends with you. As such stories multiplied, legends grew of Thoreau as a modern Orpheus who could draw the creatures to him and charm them with music. Or an American Saint Francis of Assisi, who withdrew from the world, preached to the birds, and tamed the wildsome wild wolf with his blessing. Ridiculous, thought his Yankee townsman, when woodchucks ravished his beans. How could he have beans when they get all ravished by the woodchucks? Huh?
What's a woodchuck?
The woodchucks are like, I don't know what a woodchuck's like. It's an animal. It looks like a beaver, but it eats beans. Well, Thoreau asked a local farmer how to trap them without injury. Oh my goodness. This is like when I stopped shooting woodchucks when I became a vegetarian. You know that I stopped shooting at the woodchucks with my gun when I became a vegetarian. I did too. I used to shoot at woodchucks. I did have a gun. I was a killer.
Trying to become like Thoreau.
And then I became like Thoreau. Yes, shoot him, you darn fool, he snapped back. The town giggled at Thoreau when he trapped the woodchuck and released him miles away. That's ridiculous. And the woodchuck will come back with a good talking to be sure. But despite the legends of sweet wild harmony at Walden, Thoreau was well aware there was at least as much conflict as harmony. Living simply out in the woods didn't eliminate problems. It only made them easier to see. Take, for example, shelter. Building even this simple house to satisfy life's most basic needs meant negotiating permission with the landlord owner, chopping down thriving young trees, borrowing an axe to do so, probably from Alcott, though once that axe became famous, both Channing and Emerson laid claim to it. Caring for that axe, returning it, Thoreau declared, sharper than before, it meant securing help to raise the frame, bargaining for boards to close it up, and it meant discovering his house wasn't really closed at all. The field mice and ants moved in before he did. The wasps soon too, building a house catalyzed an army of helpers, rivals, and distractors. Well, he's a realist in a way, and a mystic, and a naturalist, and a philosopher, and a poet. And we are reading from the section about Thoreau going to Walden Pond. Up to page 203, 200 to 203. Any comment? I don't see why you didn't get along with the mice. I used to have mice.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
I was able to get along with the woodchucks by just not shooting them.